So I've run from this side. I have a map switch. I'm running that through from this side of the bar down through the middle. I've taken the here we have camera adjusted. On this side we have the starter button, and then the wheel sensor, speed sensor wire come together here, and I've run them through the top of the tower, connected them, wheel split sensor plug back to the speedo. There's my map, so this stuff's ready to start tucking in there, and then basically I want to get everything out of the way and tucked in here, with the exception of the headlight plug. I want that free. So this is one thing I suggest. Even you rally guys are gonna start, like I have this mass of wires here I'm gonna have to fish here next. We want to get the bike, you know, the base bike wiring solved first, and then work the rally stuff around it. And the ADV guys, same deal. Get the basic bike components run first. And when I say basic, the OEM stuff, so speedo, your sensors, your starter buttons, kills, you know, all that stuff. Get that stuff worked in there properly before you start putting on GPS power, any other accessories you have in. One thing I forgot to mention is your the EXE and FE/FES guys. You guys dealing with a key. You would have unplugged that, and that would have been the key plug would be coming up through here as well. Depending on what you want, this is where your key holder is going to be in the mid tower, either one of these sides. So that is going to come up here. You just plug it in. So you'll be dealing with that bolt as well. Dealing with bolt coming through the top here, put the starter coupler first, then the rest of these wires through. The starter coupler's the bulkiest guy you're going to put through the top of the tower, so I recommend doing that guy first. I can't really do really detailed steps on the wiring because there's so many different variants. We just can't possibly do all the different videos and all the different step-by-steps for all the videos, so you really got to figure it out for yourself. But this is really the way you're going to go with the main wiring coming up the right side of the frame, and then with the components coming in through the top. Now, one tip I have while you're fishing these through and organizing, and you can see I've added some zip ties to some of the OEM components and wires. Once you get it in, and then say for example I got all the couplings attached to the speedo, I'm going to start, before I do final zip tie, I'm going to go lock to lock and make sure nothing's really pulling hard or binding. We filleted in radius this top here because we know the wire's going to be moving a bit when you get close to the full lock. I mean, most time you're going to be riding right here and everything's going to be nice and freed up. Give yourself some slack up in this point. Again, this is my rally stuff, which I'll be attaching later, but really focus on the OEM side of the wiring before you go with your accessories or your rally stuff. Now, kind of hand tightened up and installed, we call it the stout mount plate, mainly because it's kind of a variation of our popular stout mount, which is this bar mount guy. We just slimmed it down and adapted it to our tower, and you could see made this, it's using the same mounting slots for the roadbook holders, and on this, in this case, you can get the GPS forward, back, tilt it however you want. So kind of hand tighten it. You could, I suggest even attaching your GPS dock at this point, getting it in a position where you think you like it, and you're probably going to adjust it later when you have the full fairing on the front of it, but for now just get it hand tightened into place. Really the reason for doing it now and getting it is getting your wiring through, so your power is going to come up from your battery or whatever you're running for your accessories. Get that out of the way now while it's still easy to access. Onto what we call the front frame. Now this guy is basically what we connect the fairing and the lights to, and we use the included 6x16 fender washers nuts, fender washers both sides, nuts. Put the plate on the outside of the mid tower, and these two get the 6x16. The lower mount gets this steel spacer. It really helps with stability. So this guy, show you on my camera, will just basically fit right inside of here, and then you're going to pass the big old 6x120 bolt through and hand tighten first, double check everything's nice and straight, and then do final tightening. Next, get out of your packet what we call the upper fairing knuckles and associated hardware. Right now I've got these hand tightened on. Make sure that they're sloping, this top surface is sloping up and towards the back of the bike, because when we get our antenna plate and these are our fairing, KTM calls them windshield locating pins. These are basically how the top of the windshield fairing mounts over these bosses, so that plate will go on just like this. All right, we have everything final tightened for this. Even after you're final tightened, these will still spin. These locating pins will still spin. That is okay. Get out what we call the lower fairing mount. This is how it is packaged. Take off the 8mm bolts and the 6 in the front. You see the 6 in the front is going to do two things. It's going to pinch and lock, so when we do final tighten, this will not pivot. And it's also the mounting point for, this is a KTM OEM part. This is the lower fairing bracket. The quarter turn pins for the lower half of the windshield fairing will mount to this, so we're going to put this all together. I've tightened this on, attached the metal bracket to our lower fairing mount. Don't final tighten these yet. I've got this to where I can at least, it takes some effort, a little bit of effort to pivot this guy. You want to put on the fairing, which we'll do next, to kind of locate this guy precisely, and then we'll do a final tighten. Now it's going to take an M5 ball end because it's not directly in to do the final. We've included one in the kit. If you do not own a T-handle with a ball end, 5mm ball end, we included an Allen wrench for that. I've taken the windshield slash fairing, laid it on the top locating pins. Go ahead and push them down so we're seated nice all the way down. Now, when I first installed this bracket, this face was in line with this edge of the front frame. Some of you might see that it lines up fine, but in my case, I think we're going to have to tilt this up just a bit. And what you want to do is align, spin a bit. You're aligning the hole here with in the back, the quarter turn spring clip in the back. It's hard for me to hold the camera and show you exactly how that's going in, but you get the gist. And you're going to use one of the quarter turns to assemble it, and then once you get that in, carefully take the windscreen off and then do the final tighten on these 8mm bolts. Quick tip on these spring clip, these are all KTM parts that we order. When we put them on this metal bracket, you might need to push down on this a little bit the first couple times you install it to bend it. It might not hurt to go ahead and take some pliers and squish that spring a little bit down, because when you go to engage it, it's just outside of where it'll engage with the little screw quarter turn, we'll say internal bosses on here, or threads if you will. So you might need to push this in the first couple times using it, and or take some pliers and squish it in for a little more permanent fix. All right, when you know you have this thing quarter turn right, you'll feel nice engagement into it, sprung in, and when this stops, this little ring is going to be pretty much horizontal, so you can lay it downward when it's fully locked. Now we're ready for the light LED brackets. Go ahead and get those out and the associated hardware. You'll see these bosses go to the inside. This is where the LEDs interface with it. So, and this little kick out at the bottom where it angles outward, that's at the bottom of this bracket. So get your bolt. On the S1s, it's a M4. On the Squadrons and the S2s, it's going to be a 6mm bolt. Fender washer on the outside. Go ahead and just slide them through, and then put the crown washer here on the inside of this guy. And we're going to put the LED, you put the LEDs in with this bracket on this side. So next, grab your LEDs, go ahead and tighten them down to where it's got a little friction, and then repeat for this side. You can see I've attached the two LEDs, low beam below, high beam above. I got it to where I could still pivot these. That gets to our grab and aim kind of friction. You want to get it to the point where it takes a good amount of effort to adjust them. You don't want these moving while you're riding. You can always retighten these guys if you need to, but they're basically the friction for the adjustment. So it's pretty obvious on the S1s, like you see here, in the S2s. The high beam will be a spot pattern, so a nice clear lens. Low beam is going to be the fluted version, which has that widespread and not as far for the low beams. The Squadron kit, you'll see high beam. They'll both be combo pattern on a Squadron kit, but the high beam will be the Squadron Pro, and that will have a shiny finish to it. The low beam will be the Squadron Sport, which will have a flat finish to the outside of the housing. All right, I'm going to try to get the camera in here and show you a little tip. When you're putting on this side, the second bracket for the LEDs, you have the bolts in. I don't have them into the housing. I just got them in here and kind of in the bracket. It's not touching the LED yet, so just get these guys close, and then you're going to need to, between the plastic bracket and the LED, you need to get the locking / crown washers, whatever you want to call them. Let's see if I can get the camera in here. You got to get them in between, and it's best to fish them through the back. So you could actually pull out the plate a little bit, put a little pressure, push the washer in between here, and get it in there, so the whole friction of the pressure of the whole assembly will hold the washers in place. And you have to do that for both of these, both the upper and the lower LED, and then you could finish tightening in the bolts. All right, we have these LEDs nice and snug. Next, we're going to work on what we call the fill plate. These are clear polycarbonate, and you're going to set them in. We have these little bosses on the inside. They're not just for aesthetics, but they're also for locating the polycarbonate to get in here before we put in the screws for the stainless steel screws for plastic, which are in your packet. Go ahead and put the 4 screws in for the top half, and then the lower chin goes next. All right, I've put in the 6 screws. You just want to hand tighten these. There's not a ton of pressure on here. This is polycarbonate, so it's going to be hard to crack this. What will probably happen is these screws for plastic will strip out the bracket. So just get to the point of hand tighten it. You'll just barely see it dimple the plastic. So once kind of the head hits, just stop. There's plenty of threads in here. This thing's not going to back out the way we make the ID on our plastic, and the way these threads are so aggressive, you'll be fine. So next we're going to mount the fairing. All right, I've got our fairing again, just on the top locating pins. We're gonna pull this down, make sure that this is seated all the way down. Takes a good amount of pressure, especially the first time. The rubber grommets at the top of these guys are pretty tight. Now, you'll see, we gotta get to the point where we're hitting our polycarbonate fill plate, and there's some noise on the bottom edge of the KTM windshield here. And being they're both polycarbonate, you can flex these guys a little bit. You don't have to worry about breaking these things. So really just take some pressure, pull this guy down, she'll slide right back into here, and now we're ready to put in our quarter turn nuts.